Hello, I hope you're all safe and well. In this film I'm going to compare two of Hilleberg's solo wild camping tents, their 4-season Hilleberg Akto and their 3-season Hilleberg Enan. As a point of interest, Akto means alone in the language of Sami, which is the language of the indigenous people of northern Scandinavia, and Enan is a river in Sweden. The first thing I'll discuss is the elephant in the room, and that is the price. Both of these tents are at the upper end of the market, and if you've never looked at the price of a Hilleberg tent, please prepare yourself because they are very expensive. The Enan is more expensive than the Akto. It depending on when you watch this film, will obviously depend on the price. So it's not a lot of point in me telling you the price of them now because they'll vary by country and vary by the time you see it. But yeah, the Enan is the more expensive of the two, even though the Enan is lighter and it's a 3-season tent. But I'll try and explain the differences between 3-season and 4-season as we go out throughout the film. One thing that's not often talked about with regards to the price of Hilleberg tents, which obviously are expensive, is their resale value and customer service. Now, the customer service I and many others have had with Hilleberg is absolutely outstanding. I mean, I've asked questions on the Hilleberg Facebook group and actually had a reply from Petra Hilleberg herself. I've seen other people where they might have had issues or breakages, or they've asked for spare parts and they've been sent out to them for free. Hilleberg recently identified an issue with some of the elastic cord in a certain batch of their poles, so they sent it out for free, no issues at all. So the customer service is something that has to be considered in the price. They'll do repairs and all sorts, and their customer service compared to others is second to none. The next one is their resale value. Now, I bought the Akto in 2017 off eBay for £250. Completely standard, it was in excellent condition, there was no marks or anything on it. Now, last year I saw these in this condition or worse selling on eBay for £450. I could quite easily sell this tent now on eBay for $350. So even if I sold it for $300, I've had this tent since 2017 and I could earn an extra £50 than what I originally bought it for. You don't pick up cheap second-hand Hilleberg tents unless there is a problem with them, and I would be very wary if they are cheap, because there's probably an issue there. I bought this Enan on 12 months interest-free credit. This is not a sponsored film, but I've had great service from a company called Taunton Leisure. They do next day delivery, and I spread the payments out over a 12-month period interest-free. So that's how I was able to afford the Enan. At one point last year, you couldn't get these Enans, and I could have actually sold the Enan more than I paid for it new. And I've seen Hilleberg solos the same. There was one that went on eBay last year, I think, for about £1,000 when they're about £800 new. So they do hold their value. So if you compare them to the average price of a cheaper tent, they are a lot more expensive. But if you look after it, use it for a few years, you could potentially lose very little money in its resale value. So that's something to consider when it comes to the price. The next thing I'll quickly cover is the weight. The Hilleberg Akto is on the books, it's 1.7 kilograms. Now I've got the footprint attached to this and it takes it just over 1.9 kilograms. The Enan is 1.2 kilograms, and I weighed it on the kitchen scales, which are pretty accurate, and it was just slightly over 1.2 kilograms. Now that's as they come standard in these bags with the spare pole. There's a little part to a spare pole, all the pegs and bags. You could potentially make them slightly lighter, but there is a considerable distance. I mean, when you pick them up, you can feel a big difference in the weight. I mean, this feels much lighter than the Akto. I chose not to attach a footprint on the Enan because I'm going to be using it as a 3-season in the summer months, and I wanted to keep the weight to a minimum, which is the main reason I bought it, was to try and reduce my pack weight. I'll also point out another reason later in the film of why I decided not to attach the front footprint, and it is to do with the way I sort of normally vent the tent compared to the way that you can vent the Akto. Next thing I'll briefly cover is the pack size. Now, they may look very similar on appearance there, and they do generally need to be packed this way. Although you can take the pole bag out and pack the poles on the outside of the tent, the Akto has got four small, I'll point them out later, four small fiberglass poles that support the ends. The Akto the Enan, is a slightly different design, and it has two fiberglass poles, one on each end, and they're slightly longer than the Aktos. Now, those small fiberglass poles can be removed, but it's not recommended. I mean, there are additional things that you could lose, and it's not too difficult to pack these, but just bear in mind that you don't generally compress these tents as you can do with some others in a ball, even if you have removed the poles. So the way I'll generally carry this is I'll pack this as one of the first items down the side of my rucksack, and then slide the likes of the sleeping bag and all that down the side of it. It's also small enough, depending on what rucksack style you've got, to fit it on the outside, one of the side pouches on the outside. Now, if you are going to use that method, please bear in mind the top, although it can be cinched down, there is a hole there, so there is the potential of you slipping and something sliding out. So what I have done in the past is I've packed the tent in a roll top dry bag and actually clipped the top around one of the straps on the pack, so if I do happen to fall or lean forward, the poles and pegs can't potentially slide out of the hole in the top, and it's also actually clipped to the pack. So just bear that in mind. They're not really compressible unless you remove those fiberglass poles, and I really wouldn't recommend it. It's a lot of faff at the other end if you're having to slot them back into their place inside the tent. And I'll point out those fiberglass poles later in the film so you can see where they're positioned and how you can potentially remove them if you wish to do that. But the bags that come with them are they're well sized. You don't ever struggle to fit the tents in them, and they do compress quite small. The Akto is obviously slightly bigger because the material is thicker, and I've got the footprint in that, but they're very similar in size, and they do compress a lot smaller than what you can see in these bags here. Next thing I'll cover is the material differences. Now, the Akto has what's called Curl-On 1200. This is triple coated on both sides with silicone, and it has a tear strength of 12 kilograms. And when you set it up, it's fairly translucent, so you can see shadows and light through it. It's not see-through, so don't worry. The Enan has Curl-On 1000. This has a tear strength of 8 kilograms. And again, it's translucent when you set it up, but this one, it's got an unusual texture to it. When you rub it, if you've never touched this material before, it almost feels like you're rubbing skin. It's really unusual, and it just feels extremely lightweight but high quality material. So both Curl-On fabrics, but that one's 1200 and that one's 1000. Right, the pegs and poles. Both the Akto and the Enan use the same 9mm DAC featherlight poles. They're exactly the same. There's a slight difference in colour is because the Enan is newer. Both come with a spare pole section and this tube to do in the field repairs. They'll come with this instruction little leaflet you just peel off there, which fit inside the pole bags. The pegs are slightly different. The Akto's pegs are slightly longer, and they're the V-shaped cut design. And then the Enans, like I said, slightly shorter, and they're like a Y style cut design. I've used these with no issues at all, really. What I generally do is, if I need to, is I'll put some rocks or slightly small boulders on them. If you look at my Peak District film when I was in the Enan, I did have some issues because the ground was very boggy, and these are not very long pegs. So I managed to find some small rocks. Could have done with some bigger ones, but the small rocks did hold the pegs down. I'll put a link on the screen now to a great film by Seamus McCaffrey from Outdoors Inspiration, where he'll go through some different options of different types and styles of pegs you can use, and some methods of staking the tent out, and that film is well worth a watch. Another difference between the two are the guylines. The Akto uses a 3mm guyline and the Enan uses a 2mm guyline, and you'll see that the lockouts are much smaller on the Enan than they are on the Akto. I'm not going to show you how to pitch the tents because Hilleberg's YouTube channel does a much better job than me, so I'll put the links in the description below for them. But they both pitch roughly the same. They take about 5 minutes. The Akto has 2 extra pegs at the end, which I'll point out shortly. So the Akto has 10 pegs in total and the Enan has 8 pegs, but the pitching time is roughly the same. Hilleberg tents currently come in 3 colours. So you've got green, red and sand or browny colour. Now you'll notice the Akto is a lighter colour green than the Enan, and that's because the Akto is the older green colour. I'm not sure how old this tent is. I had it second hand in 2017, but the Enan is the newer green colour. So if you order a new Akto now, it will come in this darker green rather than this lighter green colour that you'll see here. The Enan has this one guyline here which comes from the bottom along there. We can just make it out to the peg, and then the one line up there. The Akto has 4 guylines coming out with 4 tensioners. Both the Akto and the Enan have guylines running off the main pole here for the sideward stability. A quick tip with all guylines is to have them fully extended, so you'll see that the line locks here are really close to the tent. The same with any of the guylines around any of the tents, and not just Hilleberg. Any tents, the guylines will work better if they're as fully extended as possible. One of the main reasons is the best way to hold against the tension of the wind would actually be at a 90-degree angle. Now, unless these guylines were tied up against a tree or an object, then they have to be rooted into the ground. So if they're fully extended, they're at their best angle to provide the best form of tension there. If you had them really short and the peg went low down into the ground, they're not going to have the tension sideways as best or as efficiently as possible. So always loosen these off where possible as close to the tent, so you get the maximum length of the guyline that you can physically achieve, depending on the ground that you're in. It's not always possible. You might have rocky ground or objects in the way, but when possible, fully extended. The Enan contains a couple of extra tags on the end here for you to attach extra guylines. I've not done it yet, but I have seen some where they've attached some guylines which would go to the peg over there. I have seen some where they've attached guylines and pulled the guylines out in this direction. Apparently it offers a bit of extra stability in the wind when pulling there, because you see as I'm pushing in, this goes in, and if I pull it tight, it'll add some extra tension there. The Akto hasn't got them. There is a tag on the Akto here on this upper vent hood where you could attach a guyline as well and run that out, maybe to keep this from collapsing. Although I've never really had an issue with it, but I haven't had the Akto out in really high winds. I have had the Enan out, and I've not seen anybody on any YouTube videos actually attaching a guyline here, but there is a tab there where you could fix one. One issue I see people having is with the door, and they're not rolling the door up correctly, and what they find is that the door will drop. Now, both the Enan and the Akto, the doors are exactly the sort of same design. And what happens is people will naturally want to roll it up this direction and clip it up with the elasticated toggle here. And then what they find is as the wind blows, it drops down like that. If you roll it up in the way that I'll show you now, you won't have that issue. So if you grab it from the side and roll it from left to right and tie it up, it will be fine. So I'm rolling it from the side rather than from the bottom up. Now that won't fall down now, the Akto is exactly the same. Probably the most significant difference between the Enan and the Akto is the design at the end here. The Enan uses a single fiberglass pole, which you just might be able to make out there, and then this is the way it vents here. Now it's a slightly different material than is on the rest of the fly sheet, which is breathable, but it also is waterproof. Now I have had rain blowing against this and it does just run off. I didn't have any rain coming through when I was out in it. I'll show you the Akto in a minute, but it's just one long pole in the centre here, and then the one guy line attachment running off there. The Akto has these 4 guy lines with their tensioners here, and then there's like an overhang so the rain would run off here before onto the ground, and then there's a solid sort of material here with a vent that you unzip. So now it's fully open, whereas the Enan, there isn't an option to open that there. And both ends of both tents have the same venting option. So the other side of the Akto is exactly like this, and the other side of the Enan was exactly like the one you saw before. So if it's really bad with drifting snow, you could zip this up, but in normal conditions, you could have it unzipped like that. Now, one thing that determines the difference between this being a 3-season and the Akto being a 4-season is this sort of mesh door. It's for keeping bugs out, but obviously it's not going to offer much protection against wind and drafts, although the fly sheets do go to the ground on both tents. You do get a bit of wind underneath. Now, I've not really had an issue, and I did go up into the Peak District in high winds, but I found that with the clothing I'm wearing and then getting in the sleeping bag, which is wind resistant anyway, I don't find this has caused much of a problem, and it does aid with ventilation of the tent. So that's one difference between this being a 3- and 4-season tent. And you can see the Akto, it's got full material there. The material of the inner tent is also slightly thicker as well, but like the difference in the thickness of the fly sheet. But the Akto there, it's fully closable. There's also the option of pulling down a Velcro flap and then having some venting with this sort of mesh panel here, which is up the top end. And I very rarely close the whole tent up. At a bare minimum, I would keep it like this, but to be honest, the majority of the time I have most of the inner open. Another difference that makes the Akto a 4-season tent is it has this upper vent. This is designed so if snow drifts up against the walls of the tent and covers the panels that I showed earlier, you'll still have fresh air getting in through the top, and with this cover it allows it to be open whilst it's raining. It's got like a bendy material, I'm not sure what it's made out of, but there's like a wire there where you can pull it and flex it into a particular position you want. The Enan is just sealed off. Both of them have these sort of flexible lips that cover the zips. And what the Enan's got is it's got an additional zip up the top here. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. And then you can just pull that down and allow some venting that way. So this is what I had when I was at the Peak District. When I was cooking, I pulled this down and then I vented it that way, and then the wind was able to get in. But obviously if it's raining, rain will also get in, which is the main reason, other than weight, that I haven't attached a footprint to this tent. So because I haven't got a footprint attached, if I do open the upper vent at the top here, then any rainwater could just drip onto the ground and dissipate through the ground rather than collect on top of the footprint there. So there's two benefits. One is the weight saving, and then two is it allows rainwater. And with this being used in a 3-season mode, it's likely that the majority of the time the weather should be a little bit better. So this is the vent and the Akto on the inside. So you've got a bit of that dark breathable material there which is water resistant, and you've got two zips which you can pull down to allow it to hang down, and you get the ventilation through that way. You can lower this door zip as far down as you want to go and actually use it as a window. Now there is a fairly well-known issue with the Akto of it leaking, and it leaks in the area of this vent here. And I had it leaking after about 6 months of me using it, and all I did to rectify it was I put some seam grip over the stitching here, and on the outside I put some Fabsil, and a couple of years have gone by now and it's not dripped since. So it's an easy problem to rectify. You don't have that problem in the Enan because there is no zip in that position there. On the outside, so the area it leaked was in this area here, so I just sprayed some Fabsil up all the stitching and around there, and it's not leaked since. Internal pockets. This is the Enan, so it's got two pockets there in the centre, and on the Akto it has one pocket there. So probably the most significant redesign between the Akto and the Enan is the ends. The Enan has that one longer fiberglass pole propping up the centre, but it's slightly narrower at either end. The Akto has two shorter fiberglass poles, but they prop it up in a rectangular shape rather than up in the centre there. The advantage that the Enan has over the Akto is because of that longer pole, it holds this material off your face better. In the Akto it doesn't hold it off, and it's known to droop, especially under high winds where it will press against your face and under snow loading. Now hopefully you'll see the difference in height here. It is quite considerable. I mean, I don't know how many inches or centimetres, but there is quite a difference there, and the key is because the pole is in the centre and rigid. When the wind blows, it doesn't press this down. It might press it in slightly from the sides, but it doesn't press it against your face, and that's definitely better. And also, because of the way it holds it up in the centre, it actually would shed snow a little bit better than the Akto will. An advantage of the Akto's design is you can fit quite a large rucksack at the end there, which I've often done. I think I've mentioned it in a couple of my films where I've put my pack like this, and it keeps the bottom of your sleeping bag from touching the end of the inner, and it doesn't really press the inner out too much. There's still plenty of space there when the tent's closed up. You can't do it with the Enan at all. There's just no room. So what you'd have to do, and there's plenty of space, is you'd have to position the rucksack at the side here if you're not going to put it into the vestibule. It's just too narrow there for anything more than really a very small sort of day sack. The vestibules on both of the tents are exactly the same size, and they're a good size. You can actually lie in there and take all your wet clothing off. That rucksack I've got there is a 70 litre Osprey Ether, and it takes up just half the size, so you've still got plenty of space to cook and do bits and bobs there. So it's a good size vestibule on both of them, and they're both exactly the same size. Same pack in the Akto. Now the inner tent on both is attached by these toggles here, which can easily be undone, and it's how you can gain a couple of extra inches height. So if you're quite a tall person, just undo these toggles and then you can sit up, and it allows you to gain plenty of extra head height. And I've got a couple of inches above my head now. I know I'm not sitting on any sort of air mattress, but I can move about in here, and it only took a couple of seconds just to unclip them. Now the zips on the Enan are bigger than the Akto, but I think the new Aktos have got these same style new zips, which are slightly larger. And also in high wind there is a zip lock, so you see this red toggle here. What you do in high winds is just put the toggle through the zip to hold it down rather than the wind blowing it up, and it also helped it stop flapping about. I've never really had an issue with it up to now, touch wood. So this is the fiberglass pole I was on about on the in the Enan, one long one in the centre there, with this breathable mesh. Also, which I've not seen shown on any videos up to now, is a little pouch where there's material. So if you're in really bad weather, if you pull this material out of this pouch here, I'm trying to do it one-handed. To remove the pole, it's a little bit fiddly, but it can be done. You basically pull it out of the socket there. It's like a stiff socket, so you just bend it. If I can do it with one hand, it will come out of here. There you go. And then you can take that pole out. I wouldn't recommend it, but it is doable. It's a little bit easier to do it on the Enan and the Akto. And that's it, done back up again. Both tents have a number of reflective strips around them which glow up when there's light shone on them. And on the ends, the Enan, up there, the ends there, and the Akto above the door, and then one on each of the four corners. But there isn't one on this side. Like I said, that might have changed with the newer Akto. All Hilleberg tents will have a label with the person's name who made it attached to it somewhere. So there it is on the Enan. Unfortunately, I haven't found one on the Akto. I've had a good look. There's a serial number, but there isn't a name of the maker on there. The next thing I'll briefly discuss is condensation. You're going to get condensation on any tent, whether it be a small 3 or 4 season tent. You can get condensation on a tarp. It's predominantly to do with the conditions you're in, and obviously when you're breathing out at night, you're breathing out a lot of moisture on your breath. I have had lots of tents over the years, from massive family tents to obviously these small ones. And I've not suffered any more condensation in these tents than any of the tents that I've had. And I just mitigate the issue. So some tips from me is I spray the lower quarter of my sleeping bag with some Nikwax spray about twice a year. I take a microfiber towel, so especially when I've cooked, or if I've noticed that condensation is forming on the inside of the fly, every now and then I'll just wipe it off. I'll try and vent it as best I can. Obviously the venting is slightly different on the Enan as it is on the Akto. The Akto has the additional benefit of the upper vent. But like I said, I can unzip that a bit, and if it is raining, the rain will probably drip down on the floor. But I wouldn't let condensation become a bigger issue than it actually is. If you mitigate it, for example, you could take a bivvy bag, but there'd be no point in taking the tent in a way. Hilleberg recommend putting your waterproof jacket around the base of your sleeping bag, but I found the Nikwax treatment works absolutely fine. But you will get condensation in any tent if the conditions are right. Whether it's still air or it's cold and you're breathing out warm air inside. No tent has found a way of getting rid of that. Like I said, I've had condensation dripping off a tarp onto my face before now, and the tarp is fully open. The last thing I'll quickly mention is the fact that both of these tents can be double poled. In other words, you can slide 2 of the same 9mm poles into the sleeve here for extra stability in the wind. I've never double poled. I've not seen a YouTube video where anyone has double poled yet, but it just aids the stability of the tent in high winds and a bit of extra strength in snow loading, so they can both do it. Like I mentioned earlier, I've had the Akto now since 2017. I've taken it out plenty of times in all 4 seasons, wind, rain, snow. I've not had the Akto out in really high winds. However, the first time I took the Enan out onto the Peak District, it was quite strong wind and it held up absolutely fine. The only drama I had was the pegs, which I got some rocks for, which I mentioned earlier. But they're cracking tents. They're very similar design. And I suppose the question people will probably ask is, which one would I choose? I chose to get the Enan because I was well impressed with the design of the Akto, but I preferred the redesign of the ends so that it would hold it off your face. And I also wanted to reduce the weight of my pack. I'm not going ultra lightweight, but I do want to bring the weight of my pack down because I'm not getting any younger and those hills seem to be getting higher and steeper every time I go up them. So it was more of a weight reduction exercise. I like the darker colour as well, but the Akto has served me well over the years, and hopefully my younger son one day will come out with me in it on the mountains there. If you think I've missed something out, or you've got a question on either of the two tents, please ask in the comments below. I will get back to any of you. If I have missed something, please feel free to add a comment, and if it's important, I'll try and pin it or keep it near the top so other people can read it. But they're two absolutely fantastic tents. Could you use the Enan in the snow? Absolutely. The fly sheet goes all the way to the ground. You can seal up the ends. The only issue you will have is if the snow is drifting with that upper ventilation, but you can get by. It will put up with snow. It's just that the material on this is slightly stronger, the guylines are slightly stronger, and it does have this upper vent here, but at the cost of some additional weight. And although the numbers don't accurately show much difference in weight, when you hold them in your hands, that weight difference is quite significant, and the pack size is quite a bit smaller as well. I hope you found this video useful. It's taken me all day to make it. And George is still with us, for those of you who saw my last film, but he's been pretty quiet today. He's just out of view of the camera. But thank you for watching, and I'll hopefully see you again soon. Take care. Bye. I'm going to say hello, George. They've been worried about you.